All right, you guys. Are you ready for this epic podcast? A podcast about, that's right, you saw the title, immersive theater. An epic looking back from your friend, or, maybe you just know me from across the way, across the industry, your comrade in experience, Andrew Hoepfner. I am the creator at the immersive theater company Houseworld Immersive, and our three major works are most recently Bottom of the Ocean, BOTO as we like to call it, and Whisperlodge, which was a collaboration between myself and Melinda Lau, and then first our signature titular work that started it all, Houseworld. And I'm here with you today because I am also a lover not only of immersive theater but of long form podcasts. And I was thinking about it, and there's something about people and their ability to publish things for free and reach a large audience for free on the internet. It's the reason why there's ASMR, right? ASMR would have never been curated or picked up by ABC or NBC or CBS back in the day. They would have never made a feature film about ASMR. It would have never been straight to video. We had to wait for the moment when people can publish videos for each other for free. And there's a lot of beautiful things. There's wonderful comedy that's coming out now that we're making comedy for each other, and it's not going through that filter of the big networks and big studios. And likewise, I like to think that the long form podcast, whether it's an audio podcast, a video podcast, these new pieces of media that people are listening to this very year that last 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, and I love that medium. And I am making my own submission to that field. I love how it gets us away from sound bites and it gets us away from scripts. If you guys have been watching me, you can see that a lot of the stuff that I post is scripted, because I have a certain idea. I want to make it as exciting as possible and get you through it as quickly as possible. So I do a lot of that script and soundbite stuff. But I love being able to see the warts and all real human. And that's what you're going to get to see today as I walk you through. And this is, I just finished a year and a half straight of BOTO, and factoring in the pandemic and the stuff that came before it, like 4.5 years. And this is sort of a post-mortem. It's sort of like me taking stock as I look at what I want to do next. It's me taking stock of everything that I've observed and everything that's happened for me in my little 8-year journey through immersive theater. For whatever super friends, for whatever super nerds or super fans there are out there. Even if this is only for the 10 cast members of BOTO who care enough about what's going to happen next to watch this 2-hour piece of work. It's for whoever. It's for posterity. I've posted at this point, I've been posting to YouTube since the beginning. And at this point, there is a lot of stuff from me that's, 17 years old. And it still hasn't found an audience. So this may just hang in obscurity forever. But, some say that this is a burgeoning field, immersive art and entertainment. So who knows? Maybe this could become some weird artifact, if you will, of the early days of immersive and experiential, participatory, interactive art and entertainment. And before I get into the stuff that I made and, you know, what happened and what made me want to do the next thing. That's what a lot of this is going to be. But before I get into that, I want to just take my, as a bird, if I'm the bird, my bird's eye view of this field of immersive stuff, immersive theater, immersive art. And one thing that fascinates me about this field is that immersive art and entertainment in some ways has a very big and exciting and sort of like buzzy component to it. And, you know, that you could say that that's expressed in things like Galactic Star Cruiser, right? The Star Wars Hotel at Disney World. And you could say, well, this is an example. And even Rise of the Resistance, that ride, and the things about that experience that feel immersive, that borrow or respond to immersive theater. You could say, well, Disney is getting interested in immersive entertainment. Does this indicate that a lot of future entertainment is going to be embodied and participatory like this? And there's other things like, you know, Secret Cinema got bought this year for like some millions of dollars, I think. Fever was valued at like, I don't know, many millions or even like $1 billion. Fever worked with, you know, like the Stranger Things experience this year. And they do a lot of interactive, immersive. They promote, I guess they find audiences for these shows. There's another company this year, Lighthouse something, and they do those projection mapping like immersive Van Gogh, which are not my favorite examples of what an immersive experience is. You know, we've had this big fad. It appears to me to be a fad of just, you know, projecting images and videos on every wall. And maybe it's Van Gogh, maybe it's Frida Kahlo, maybe it's The Lion King, and they call it immersive Lion King, immersive Disney animation, immersive Van Gogh. And, you know, that's a part of the landscape. Not all of this landscape is cool. I'll say that for it. But it's one indicator out there that this is both an emerging business and an art form that people are getting more excited about. Audiences are getting more excited about it. Makers are making it more. Maybe it's headed towards bigger and better and more exciting things. What else? There was one other. Oh, Meow Wolf, of course. Meow Wolf has been doing their thing. There is some ambient noise. Oh, where am I, by the way? Let's finish that thought about Meow Wolf. So Meow Wolf has been doing their thing since 2015, I don't know. They've been before that. But the House of Eternal Return in Santa Fe, it opened shortly after Houseworld closed, I believe, like maybe 2016. And now they have 3 locations. They're opening more in Houston. It's another example of, is this, like, I don't know, is this big? Is this thing big? And then there are other reasons to believe that this is a very small, obscure, niche, esoteric art form. For example, the show that I did last year and am maybe now best known for was 3 performers performing for 5 people. We did that 2 times a day, 6 days a week. So we reached 60 people a week. And the crazy thing to demonstrate the smallness of immersive theater is that in my 8 years, I've probably 6,000 people have seen my work in person. And in some ways that seems crazy because, you know, Jay-Z performing for Yankee Stadium, that's 100,000 people seeing Jay-Z in 1 hour. Or like you could say maybe like the course of one day if you factor in the preparation at Yankee Stadium. But in some ways, immersive theater feels like a very inefficient way to reach people. And as far as artists hoping to make their living off it, or artists hoping to be invested in, to find investors, this can just look like a very weak business model. And we're not here to solve that business model today. And I'm not even here to convince you that it's not a bad business model. Maybe it is. I am personally in love with the work that is small and is intimate to the degree that maybe it is a bad business model. And I found a way to make a portion of my income and to structure a life around making that kind of work. And I'm not really so concerned with pouring in the jet fuel and getting rich off immersive theater or immersive experiences. I'm actually more interested in just chiseling away at this little sector of the art form that I love. And other people can... If other people want to get influenced by it and then make it a better business or reach more people with the same amount of artistic passion that I have, and sort of like, I don't know, if someone with their heart in the right place or whatever is able to retain all the magic but reach more people, then that would be great too. And I guess to that extent, I'm trying to chip in to that discovery as well. But a lot of the time, I'm simply embracing these scenes, these one-on-one scenes where you encounter characters, you have conversations with them, they give you objects, you take those objects and go and complete some sort of mission or something. That's the stuff that really gets me excited. And it's very small stuff. 6,000 people have seen all Houseworld plus Whisperlodge plus Bottom of the Ocean plus all the little side quests that I did, which you will hear about in time in this long form podcast. And it's wild too, right? Like, I mean, I remember before this, before I was in theater, I was touring in bands, and even I, playing in a band that you've never heard of, you weren't hearing about then, and you certainly haven't heard of now. Even I was playing for 6,000 people in a night, in one swoop. But the performance that we're doing, it has a character that I believe is special enough that it's okay that it's happening to less people. For example, in BOTO, like, we got to know those attendees that were coming through. By the time they were leaving our door, we knew what they were like. We knew if they were introverted or extroverted. We knew about what they value, or their memories, or like what sort of emotional state they're at in life. And so that's a valuable encounter that's maybe more like doing the way that a psychiatrist or a therapist sees a patient. Like, is it not worth doing because there weren't 100 people in that room? No. It's intimate yet worthwhile performance, in my humble opinion. And you can have your own humble or otherwise opinion. So we're looking at something that's very big, that feels big in this contemporary 2023 world, on the cultural landscape, but also small. Another thing that I wanted to give a shout out to, not a shout out, but another thing I wanted to note before, we get into my story is like the experience economy. That's another term, and we can all decide how much it's a buzzword or full of hot air, and how much we actually are in an experience economy. But I will say this, is that music and video are more accessible now, right? Like many of us pay a $9.99 monthly Spotify subscription, and it allows us to basically hear any song in any album whenever we want, wherever we want, which is a lot different from going to the record store and making that commitment and saving up and having your record collection, or wanting to own that record, wanting to own that song. And we all have our streaming subscription, or maybe our 1 or 2 or 3 streaming subscriptions. That combined with cherry picking this or that movie that you want to see, we can all, with a few clicks and for a very small amount of money, we can see any movie that we want, almost anytime, anywhere. And with that access, one could make the argument that media is less valuable than it was, say, in the 90s, or that it was, say, in the 60s. Some people say that material objects of all kinds, material goods are easier to get than ever. Now we have all the stuff on Amazon, we have Etsy for arts and crafts, we have eBay for antiques, and with a few clicks, we can have anything more or less anything we want outside of luxury goods and cars and houses and things like that. And we can have it quickly. And so some make the case that that maybe younger generations are becoming less materialistic, and what's becoming more valuable is having a unique experience. And that might be going somewhere that is a rare or one of a kind place. It may mean doing some activity that only that not that many people have done. I'm gonna have water by me. Excuse me for 1 second. And I would say, to some extent, it does feel like, me personally, why am I in Bluefields? Well, that's a good question. I'm in Bluefields, Nicaragua, and man, you guys, I wanted this video to be in a super cool location. Nothing against Bluefields, but I filmed this entire thing. I filmed it on Little Corn Island, a little dot in the Caribbean, also in Nicaragua, or also belonging to Nicaragua. And first, I filmed it at the ocean, and people started cutting down palm trees with chainsaws for long stretches of time. Went to a second location in the jungle, and then it started to rain. My phone's lightning input is now destroyed, walking back in that torrential Caribbean surprise downpour. And then I did a third segment on New Year's Day. So that was New Year's Eve, Little Corn Island. So momentous, right? Looking back on the last day of 2022. And then I did New Year's Day 2023 on my porch, on the porch of my bungalow, and the wind was surprisingly fucking with the sound so much, fucking with the phone microphone, that it was just unusable. And so here we go again. It's January 4th, 2023, right? In Bluefields, Nicaragua, just on the way home from Little Corn Islands. That was the main destination. But in other ways, the audio is not perfect. There is some ambient noise, but it's still exotic to you. And hey, these plants. Oh, it sounds like the fan's coming on, so I'm going to turn down the brightness on my screen. So I might even turn off the bright. I'll just turn off the monitor so it doesn't get all hot and fanny. It's exotic to you. The ambient noise is quieter, and let's face it, there's not that much to do in Bluefields other than sit in your hotel and long form podcast. So here we are. And now I believe that I said everything I wanted to. We're going to jump into my origin story of why did I start making immersive stuff to begin with. Some of this, I mean, it's for you if you like storytelling, if these stories happen to be good. Some of it's just for me. Some of it's just, I mean, the stuff that I'm the most interested in this video as we get to it is like how one show led to the next and what I was trying to learn or get out of each show. But this whole podcast, if that's what you would even call someone talking into their laptop, it's just, I kind of feel like I want to just clear some space in my head, and I feel like I wanted to just lay this all down in one swoop, just like Jay-Z playing Yankee Stadium, just one swoop, tell you the origin story and tell you the story of all the shows and the information that I find interesting. So here we go. The thing that got me interested, well, I was touring, right? I was touring in my 20s, playing in bands. And in 2012, 2013, 2014, there started to be a decline. It seemed like the various projects that I was in, we were getting worse, and people were enjoying the shows less. And, you know, you can see that 10 years later, I'm still crazy enthusiastic about making stuff. It's all that I want to do. And so 10 years ago, as this touring life looked like it was winding down, I sort of, I was alarmed and upset of like, I don't want this to be over. I don't want to move on to a boring, non-creative life. And so, and one of my day jobs when I wasn't touring was being a church musician, right? And I'd just try to like be a bunch of church organists and have them either leave the door open for me when I'd leave on tour for a year, like save a place for me, or I'd just find new work when I got back. And so sometimes I would end up recording albums at these churches where I had the keys to, right? They have services one day a week on Sundays. The other 6 days, there's nothing going on. So I started noticing these underutilized church properties, empty 6 days a week. And even as I started to get into this immersive theater stuff, it started being like, I staged the shows in the parts of the property that aren't being used. And sometimes I would do it at the places where I was an employee, such as Houseworld, the public run of Houseworld in 2015. But this first location I'm going to tell you about, I was not working there, right? I was just, it had gotten to the point where I was even friends with pastors because I've been doing this work for so long. As a non-believer, I just couldn't turn down that I knew how to play hymns, and it was good money and reliable self-employed work, and I couldn't stay away. So I did it for a decade. And one of the places where it led was one of the pastors was like, there's this, our sister church down in Flatbush, they have this idea of having young people live in their empty parsonage, you know, the house where the pastor used to live, but the pastor hasn't lived in there in decades. And would you want to live there? And sure enough, I ended up being one of those young-ish people. I was like 30, 31 at the time, not making any art at the church, not pitching in that much to the church, besides some awkward Sunday school lessons that I got roped into teaching. But mostly I was just living in this extraordinary, historic, massive Flatbush mansion where the pastor used to live with 6 other kind of like slackers with nothing in common, or just not even slackers, just Joe Schmoes who just happened to be roped into this young people living in a church project. And so I was still there during this downward spiral of my touring life going down the drain. And I didn't know what to do next. And I kind of got the sense that the church was getting sick of us and aiming to kick us out. So the cool pastor had left at that point, and every time that one of my roommates would leave this Flatbush mansion, they wouldn't replace the roommate. So basically they were trying to let us naturally just leave, and then they locked the door behind us. But a few of us weren't going because it was a pretty sweet deal. And so what I was doing that summer, the summer of 2014, I decided to just trim the hedges on this big old church property and mulch the church property, which the church apparently didn't even like because they got rid of all my mulch work as soon as I left, as soon as they kicked us out. But and I was just doing that, manual labor that summer, and just in my version of like atheistic or agnostic or just spiritual but not religious praying, I was just wanting to be creatively useful. I was wanting the best of myself to align with something good that I could contribute to the world. I wanted the best of the world to flow through me. And I was just looking for anything, whether it was like the next band or anything. A mulching business, what have you. And no, I wouldn't have settled for a mulching business. And another sort of interesting little thread in my origin story was at the time I was really inspired by David Lynch's the audiobook for Catching the Big Fish, which is David Lynch talking about transcendental meditation. And there's something about him just speaking those passages in his Lynchian way that is irresistible. And I think I just wanted that sort of electric inspiration that David Lynch has when he talks about creativity, especially in those days. And I sort of weaseled my way in. I found a person. I made friends with someone from Fairfield, Iowa, the TM town, and I weaseled my way into free classes at the David Lynch Transcendental Meditation Center near Grand Central at the time. And so I was learning TM, just like hoping to be useful to the world and hoping to just be happy, hoping to know what to do with my life. Even sometimes just sitting in that historic church, Revolutionary War sort of church, and just closing my eyes and wanting to know what to do, whether or not there's a prayer, I don't know. And then my friend from Brazil came along. My friend from Brazil was staying at the house and doing the tourist thing. And one day she invited me to Sleep No More. And I was so excited. It just felt like I didn't realize I was waiting to go to Sleep No More, but as soon as she invited me, I realized that I wanted to go, and that it almost felt like Madame Tussauds, Like, if I asked any of my friends to go to Madame Tussauds, they'd be like, why? Like, as a joke? I don't think it's really that fun going to Madame Tussauds, but if you want to, I'll go with you. Well, Sleep No More is more expensive than Madame Tussauds, so it was just a sort of thing. It was like asking your friend to go to Times Square with you. It just felt like it was old news. None of my friends were really theater people, or most of my friends weren't theater people anyway. And I just felt sheepish and shy about being like, remember that show people were talking about a year ago, Sleep No More? Would you want to... Let's go check it out. But Camila was going to Sleep No More. She invited me along. I went and immediately put on that mask, stepped into that environment. My imagination was just set afire. And I just felt like I was in a different state of mind just from the get-go. And some of the places where my mind went were sort of, self-involved and narcissistic, admittedly. And I started thinking about the ways that I could be a spectacle in that show. And I would think about things like, I can stand up on this desk, and then the next person in a mask that walks into this room, they'll think that like I'm part of the show. Obviously, like, masked people aren't interested in other masked people in general in Sleep No More. But, I could start, if I did something weird enough up here, started taking pictures off the wall, or if I contorted myself into a pretzel, I could become a spectacle within this spectacle. And I started thinking about other sort of asshole-ish disruptive stuff of like, my friends and I, we could all like make a choreographed dance and plan it out, and then all buy tickets to Sleep No More and start doing it in this space, and we'd become our own spectacle. Everyone would look at us and we'd be a part of the fantasy. And of course, I was also thinking about like, you could plan an orgy and we could all just start having sex and all kinds of like somewhat unoriginal and transgressive and just mischievous, naughty. But why was I thinking of that all of a sudden in that mask, in that music, in that dark set design world? And it wasn't so much that I was having any great ideas, but just the fact that the mask was making me think of those possibilities, that was exciting to me. And I was just talking about that show with everyone I met in the next month, and I started daydreaming, and I realized that I was daydreaming in the genre of Sleep No More, daydreaming new stuff to do, and that's how it started. And so first it was Sleep No More, then I started taking the TM lessons and doing TM on my own. And only a few days later, like 3 or 4 days after I started doing TM, and I don't think that it was, I'm not a huge believer in the transcendental meditation technique in general, Specifically, I'm not a huge believer. In general, when it comes to all forms of meditation, I think there might be something there. But I don't know if that's what did it either. I think that really there was just a desire in me. It was that desire to like have what David Lynch had, or like be sort of my own David Lynch. It was my desire to like pick up the pieces of my life and do any new thing that felt good. And it was seeing Sleep No More. And I can remember, so I was living in the Flatbush Mansion, the Flatbush Reformed Church parsonage at Church Avenue and Flatbush Avenue. And the first daydream that I remember was a sort of concert, right? I was very tired of concerts and bars and clubs and outdoor festivals. And I imagined this sort of, I don't know, it was sort of like a Mount Olympus. It was like a contemporary Brooklyn Mount Olympus sort of vibe, where people were just like laying out in this beautiful chandeliered living room that we had at the Flatbush Parsonage. Everyone's just sort of laying on their back in repose as, I don't know, like people play harps, and maybe there's even like water pouring into basins. Maybe there's even like a fountain that's built in this living room, and sunlight is just spilling in from these windows. And maybe there's even, I can't remember if there were cherubs, but cherubs would not be out of place in this music scene. And it just felt like, that is such a nice and different way to stage music than the clubs and bars and outdoor festivals. So that was the first idea, and I thought nothing of it. It wasn't like, this is the first idea and I'm gonna stage it. It was just a daydream. And then another part of that daydream, I extended it, and somebody takes you by the hand. They pluck you out of your little, like the 12 people listening to harp music, and they walk you up the stairs, and they lay you down on what at that time was my bed in my bedroom. And they stand at the foot of the bed, and they play ukulele, and they sing a song, just looking into your eyes, singing a song just for you. So those were the first two ideas. And from there, the daydreams just started avalanching. And the ideas were very simple. Like another one that I clearly remember was you walk into a room and like sort of a fairy-like girl takes your hands. Once again, she's like looking into your eyes, and you're like spinning. You're spinning around together in this little like sort of walk-in closet sort of sized room. And it's funny now because now that I've made a lot of immersive theater, I realize that it's not as simple as just doing that and you've got a good scene. Like on the side of the fence where you're like, what if we did that? What if you could walk into a room and that happened? It seems very exciting and romantic. But once you actually execute it, if we did the spin around room, people would be like, okay, we're spinning around, now what? But these rooms weren't concerned with what it was actually going to be like to execute them. They were just flights of fancy. And pretty soon I was riffing with my friend Mike Campbell, who was involved in Houseworld. He was the main collaborator, and we were daydreaming together. More simple rooms, right? Just like, and we started walking around this historic and sort of rundown, weird mansion. I mean, this is the sort of this parsonage. There were actually headstones that we found in the basement. It was like that kind of place. It was outlandish. There's a room with just all these totally like paint peeling shutters also in the basement. Just a stack of like 15 shutters with like, I don't know, cobwebs on them or something. There were no cobwebs, but there may as well have been. It was a cobweb looking sort of room. We were like, this is the room of sadness. This is the room of sorrow. This is the room of tears, and someone will just be crying in here. And this will be the room of laughter, and people will just be roaring. They can't stop laughing in this room. And then this will be the erotic room, and there'll be like a couple just having sex in this room, and you'll walk in here and you'll see people having sex. This was all, I think for a few days, I thought of this idea as performance art house. But the name Houseworld, it came pretty quickly. And I think we had a good feeling about it right from the beginning. It was kind of like, well, Maniac Mansion would be perfect, would be a perfect title, but that's already a title. Houseworld is also awesome. Let's do Houseworld. It was about that fast. And so my thought was like, I'm basically like a lost loser right now. I have nothing to do. So how about, Mike, this fall, October, November, we just spent a huge chunk of time. I'm going to spend all my time. I'll pitch in some of my savings, and we'll just try to stage as many of these ideas as we can. And we'll ask our 17 friends, we'll ask half of our friends, which is 17, to be these roles, and then we'll ask the other half of our friends, the other 17, to be the guests, and we'll just see what it looks like. November 22nd, we'll see how this all hangs in space. And Mike was game, and we started doing it, and the ideas started getting a little better and a little more complex than the spin around room. And so, for example, we came up with the man with sensitive ears. And the man with sensitive ears is a guy who's playing a game, sort of an absurdist board game. And he just is so delighted if you play his board game with him. So you can just play this absurdist game, and like it's almost like any move pleases him. The weirder, the better. Everything you do is a move, like scratching your forehead is a move. So you can really delight this man. And he's got this artifact of the house. I think that was in the original brainstorm. He's got this artifact of the house. I think it was the shell that contains the divine stone, or maybe it was just a placeholder artifact. And it seems like maybe you can win this if you beat him in the game, but it also just seems like maybe you can't win the game. Maybe the game goes on forever. Maybe he loves the artifact too much to ever give it to you. But you gain a sense that the man really is bothered by noise and has very sensitive ears. And so you realize that you can actually torture the man with sensitive ears and even like black him out. Like, is he unconscious? Is he dead? In order to get his sacred relic of the house. And so the idea of this weird, absurd man that you can either delight by playing a game with or torture and rob, that felt exciting to us. And that kind of set the scene for what Houseworld was going to be like. And so we did it. And the other thing I should just mention is that the fun and funny thing about the original Houseworld was Mike hadn't even seen Sleep No More. He was just going off of what I told him about it. And I had only seen Sleep No More. And I didn't really know how big the field was. I didn't know if there were 1,000 shows like this. I didn't know if Sleep No More was the only show like this. And the whole, like another, to backtrack a little bit, another behavior that I began to exhibit in response to seeing Sleep No More was I tried to find people that had gone to it and then always ask them what their favorite part was. And everyone would always be like, oh, I got this one-on-one and that was my favorite part. And they'd all describe these various one-on-ones with me, to me. And so and I hadn't gotten any one-on-ones in my first visit. So a big part of this intention with Houseworld is like, well, this seems to be what everybody really likes about Sleep No More. So we're going to do only one-on-ones. Ours is going to be so much better because your favorite 2 minutes is now the whole show. Just one-on-one after one-on-one after one-on-one. And we were just but the bigger point is we were just making immersive theater piece number 2. It was as if we'd seen, like, I don't know, The Jazz Singer. We were like, movies, let's make movie number 2. Let's make talkie number 2. That's what we were doing. And so that's why the premise for Houseworld, like looking back now and having seen, I don't know, 200 or 500 examples. I don't think I've attended 500 immersive theater shows, but I've heard about probably 500 immersive theater shows. And hearing about everything that's possible and kind of like how detailed and how specific you can get with the premise of your show. The premise of Houseworld almost seems like generic immersive theater at this point. It's just like you enter a house and you step into a dream, right? And it's, I guess maybe now in 2023 you might be like, and? But in 2014, that just seemed, you enter a house, you step into a dream, seemed awesome. That seemed like all we needed. And just to flesh it out a little more for you, in our defense, so Houseworld, like you go down to the basement, that's like the underbelly of the human psyche, right? It's like shame and greed and lust and rage and cruelty. And as you rise, like the scenes get brighter, the energy gets more playful, and then up high, The top floor is has sort of an ethereal, serene, peaceful, healing quality to it, or maybe like a heavenly quality. And there's one locked door in the house. It's never been open. The rumor is that this door leads to the light. None of the inhabitants of the house have ever been to the light, but they all think, because all these outsiders are showing up tonight, maybe tonight's the night when the door will be opened and we'll enter the light. So now that's enough of a premise that it gets interesting. But in many ways, Houseworld is just simple. It's like the first immersive theater idea that anyone has. And so we were making it in October, November of 2014. And as non-theater people, as musicians, and we were just one step at a time. Like, this room's boring. I'll go to the thrift store and bring back some stuff. And now it looks better. This room doesn't have a character in it. I'll get this friend and I'll be like, hey, friend, stand in this room and do this. And just do it all night, okay? Okay. That's how it all started. And we performed Houseworld for our friends, maybe like one night only, on November 14th, 2022. And we had so little idea of how it was going to go. You know, we thought that maybe our friends would just be so embarrassed for us and just be doing everything they could to not show on their faces how much they were cringing for their lost loser friends who were making performance art house. And we didn't know, like, for all we knew as first-time theater makers, that we were just going to forget some crucial step. And 10 minutes in, have to be like, all right, guys, we forgot. We didn't realize that you needed this, but now we see that we can't do the show because we didn't put that in. So now it's just a party. Sorry, everyone. It's not a show anymore. It's just a party. We forgot. Sorry. We didn't know if that was going to happen, but we did the show. And in the minutes after, it was very apparent that all of our friends who performed Houseworld the first night, that they loved playing and they'd had a grand old time, and it was very clear that the other half of our friends had a great time exploring and discovering Houseworld and being the guests, and it was a success. It was a magic success, and from that night on, November 22nd, 2014, I've just been following my nose from one thing to the next. And it's taken me all the way to here. Doing immersive theater for 8 years. Basically, my full-time job is I'd say it's like split between. Last year was split between doing BOTO and sharing the immersive theater space with other artists, sharing this set design space with other artists. Now this year, now that BOTO has closed and I'm writing the next piece, my full-time job is going to be completely sharing the venue that I've built with other artists. But it's a full-time job that came out of immersive theater. And this whole life and where it's going, like the next 3 years, 3-4 years, I'm basically dedicating my life to making the next show. And so that all started with that magic discovery that everyone had really had a great time at Houseworld on November 22nd. So it was only a few days later, probably like November 27th, 28th, we got an envelope under the door of the parsonage, and sure enough, yes, we were getting kicked out. I don't think that it was because of Houseworld. I think they were just planning that anyways. We got a 3-month notice. It wasn't like a city eviction or anything, but we weren't gonna take it to that level. We were gonna put our tails between our legs and get off their property. And so there was this big question of, should we do it again now that we know that we're going to lose this property? And once the property's gone, we basically can't do the show anymore. And the answer was yes. Let's just do it anyways. We're here till February. We've got January to like amp up the show, make it even better, like solve all the problems that we ran into. And then we'll do one each weekend in February. Like first Saturday, second Saturday, third Saturday, fourth Saturday, and then get the fuck out. Disassemble and move out Houseworld, the show, and also disassemble and move out Andrew's life. What else? There was something else that I was going to say about getting evicted. I forgot it. Okay, so we did these. We did Houseworlds 2, 3, 4, and 5, also in Flatbush, also for friends. Now it started to be for friends of friends. So we were performing for some strangers, and I think like the second weekend in February, one of Jenny Reed's friends, Jenny was playing the wind. Her friend Dana Evans came through as just an audience and a casual friend. And sure enough, like 4 or 5 days later, maybe like 9 or 10 days later, she published this very complimentary article in Gawker. And Gawker was, I guess, kind of a big deal at that time. I wasn't following, to be honest, I wasn't following that sort of media. But people told me it was kind of a big deal. And she posted this article with this very like hyperbolic, clickbaity sort of title, which was "The best theater in New York is happening in a church in Flatbush." And that got strangers interested. Real, like not friends of friends, but real full-fledged strangers wanted to come to Houseworld. And so we said, you know what? On the fourth Saturday in February, let's do an early show and a late show. So that's going to be the 6th of the Flatbush free show series. And even for the strangers, the tickets were still free. And I don't know, how many strangers did we have? Probably like 25. Like we'd expanded our audience from 70 to 25, maybe 30. But it was still not that big of a deal that we'd found 30 strangers to come to our show for free. But they all piled in. Like the article came out on Thursday morning. No, I mean, we decided to release like the new RSVP list or whatever. And the emails just piled in saying, yes, sign me up. Yes, we want to come. And that was amazing. Because we were musicians, and if you're a local musician or if you're a local anything in the arts, you know the deal with getting strangers to come to your events. And basically the deal is that you're trying to get your 20 closest friends to show up for a lot of what you do, and then you've got like your 80 other acquaintances, and you're trying to get a few of them to like also pad out the audience. And then hopefully like the opening band or whatever, they bring some people that have never seen you. And you're basically just trying to do that until you get signed. And it's very hard. And you know, you're playing a room in August and you got 17 people to come. And then you play another room in September and only 11 people came because they came last time. They're not going to, they got their fill of you for the next few months. And so for us to just get that rush of 30 strangers, can I come? Can I come? Can I come? It felt exciting, especially since we didn't think of ourselves as theater makers. So it felt like we were almost like fooling people or something. And so from there, so we cleared out, we did this 6 shows, we cleared out Houseworld, we got the fuck out of Flatbush, and, you know, Houseworld now existed in our minds in exile. And, I do remember that forgotten thought. Like another funny thing about getting the envelope under the door, getting told that we had to leave, and we'd only had one Houseworld under our belt, one performance on our belt. It's like I remember going and doing like this dry eraser board plan of like what was coming next, and the plans were immediately very ambitious. Like I think even after only one performance, I was like, and then there's going to be Houseworld LA, and then there's going to be Houseworld Berlin, and then Houseworld Bogota, and when we go to Bogota, we'll use like the folk tales of Colombia to inform the characters in that house world. When we're in LA, there's going to be like the pool scene, right? Because it's like there's the palm trees. It's going to have a different flavor. So we got super ambitious right away, and I love that sort of ambition. I don't feel embarrassed, even though we haven't done Houseworld in any of those cities, and progress has been much slower. But I love a giddy excitement, and I think it's done some of the heavy lifting with these shows. So we did the Kickstarter next, and everything just became like a Hail Mary pass after Hail Mary pass into another Hail Mary pass. That's what the whole thing became. One of my friends who has more money than me was like, $30,000. Like it takes $1 million to start a restaurant. So aiming for $30,000, that's nothing. And you can do it. People love Houseworld. And $30,000 was too high. Like it was very hard to get that. And it took a very particular miracle to get to, it took two. It took three miracles to land that Kickstarter. That was stressful, but we did it. And then it was the next thing of like 32 grand to rent a venue and make a 20-person 360 all around you theater show the last 2 hours. It's a lot to do with 32 grand. You can't use the whole 32 grand just on the venue. So we realized that we were still in over our heads, and finding the venue is a Hail Mary pass. And sure enough, I ended up using the rectory at one of the churches that I worked for that had its own sets of problem with the friars. And then once we opened the show, like it was only a week or two, and we realized that we depleted our audience up until that point. And the next Hail Mary pass was getting a neutral article in the New York Times with very compelling and beautiful pictures. That's what we got. And that helped us to sell out a run instead of going into tremendous debt. So we just kept throwing Hail Marys, and we kept catching them in the end zone. And it was the thrill of a lifetime. I guess now we get to the point of what was going right and what was going wrong in Houseworld. Like the thing that got under my skin as like the final performances were going in the books was the chaos, right? We had chaos that took us to peak human experience because of the chaos, because of the improvisation, because of the freedom and interactivity. And of course, sometimes the chaos led to stumbles of like, what if the person who's loving Houseworld the most, what if they're walking into a room and they're just by chance getting that performer's best scene and all their deepest lines, all their coolest like philosophical musings that just tie with a perfect bow at the end. They all happen just to one person by luck, and then they walk into the next room and all that performer's best jokes, they just happen to land when that audience member is in that room. And then the following audience member walks in every room and they're getting all the fumbles of every performer. Performers are riffing, they're musing, they're speculating, they're philosophizing, and it just fizzles out. Oh, I don't know what to say now, it's awkward. And that's all seen by the same audience member. That same audience member crosses the hallway. They get the worst jokes of the night from another character. And so one person could end up loving Houseworld because of the chaos. Another person, just by complete chance, can end up hating it. Not to mention, there were all sorts of just like, there's dead space in Houseworld. Like you walk down this hallway, nothing's going on down there at that time. We didn't know how to spread the action evenly. And what do you do then? So there's dead space. There's improvisations, both good and bad. And like, how do we... I'll introduce these terms that I'll come back to a few times, and that's the floor of how bad the performance can be to the audience, and the ceiling of how good it can be. And how do we raise this floor so even somebody's worst show is only kind of bad? And how do we raise the ceiling for peak human experience, and how do we get as much of the audience as possible close to the ceiling? That was the challenge. And the fact is that when the gears were in motion, it was just like, I can't do it. All I can do is feed the beast. All I can do is just keep the gears rolling. I can't edit this. Like, I can't write anything new and teach anything new to these. Like, I was just hanging out for dear life to just have Houseworld presentable at the beginning of each show. And so by the end, I had a bone to pick from the chaos. I was like, enough of this chaos. I want something more structured next time. I'd love to work in a way that's in a show that's got more structure, that's more reliable. And like, what if the best scenes I can duplicate and do every time and deliver to every audience? That's what I started getting excited about. Another thing that was going on is people were just, ASMR was starting to bubble up as a buzzy word among the Brooklynites and the Williamsburgers. And we had something that we developed in Houseworld called the VIP tickets. And I don't like, I wish we would have come up with a better title than the VIP tickets. But anyways, we would bring 10 people into the house right away, and they'd all go into different rooms, and they would get a special VIP scene that only happens once at the beginning of the night. And then the house would turn into motion, and groups of threes would enter the doors, 3 at a time until the house was full. But the VIP with the beginning, the VIP scenes at the beginning was a way to just get the house moving from minute one and get people spread out in the house from minute one. And so at that time, some of my friends were like, have you heard about ASMR? Like, you should make a scene with ASMR qualities to it. I was like, ASMR? I haven't heard about ASMR. But if you think it'll be cool, let's make a scene with ASMR. And then another friend would be like, I'm getting ASMR tingles from Houseworld. Were those triggers intentionally put in there? And the scene that they mentioned was the hands, the confessional booth with disembodied hands operating and, like doing this and this. And of course, that was not intentional ASMR. That was all invented by Hannah, the performer in that room. But I kept hearing about ASMR, and I, just like so many of us now, I YouTubed the search term ASMR and saw the countless videos with millions of views. And back then it was like the OG ASMR, to the ASMR artists. There's gentle whispering, of course, at the top of the pile. Shar ASMR was a personal favorite of mine for whatever reason. And then I think either during Houseworld, when I was just trying to come up with those VIP scenes, or immediately after, I typed in ASMR show New York City, nothing. ASMR live in person, nothing. Not in New York, not in LA, not anywhere in the world, not one event, not one listing. And, because the public run of Houseworld had been, in the end, such a success, I'll share with you one aspect of Houseworld that felt like we were onto something, is that people would cry the good tears on a regular basis, basically at every show. And at first we were like, wow, Houseworld brought someone to tears, but not of like, get me out of here, I hate this. But actually, like, the tears that you cry in when you're watching a movie, of like, sentimental, I relate to this moves me, this gets me in touch with this vulnerable part of myself or this sensitive memory. And at the beginning, we were like, wow, Houseworld moves someone to tears. That's so cool. And by the end of the run is like, of course, there are people crying every night. That's what happens here. And so because Houseworld had been such a success in that way, I was even feeling a little cocky. And I was just kind of like, oh, this immersive stuff, this seems to work. Like, I don't know if I just have a knack for it, or if there's like, the field is undersaturated. So like whatever you do, it's just kind of, it's welcomed into the cultural landscape because people are hungry for it. But I was just kind of like, immersive ASMR, in-person ASMR, sure, I'll do it. I just did Houseworld. That turned out fine. Let's do an ASMR show next. Yeah. We'll research the YouTube stuff. We'll see what they're doing in the videos, and we'll make an in-person experience. And it'll be great. Trust me. Just watch. And I typed a Facebook status update that was like, does anyone have a friend who knows more about ASMR than me? I'm a total newbie. And Alexandra, who is one of the people who played the best friend character in Houseworld. I don't know if you remember the best friend, but Alexandra said, yeah, my friend Melinda is interested in ASMR. She has ASMR. She came to Houseworld. You should talk to her. And there you go. The Whisperlodge founders were brought together, and that journey began. Maybe one side note that I'll give you here is just that back in the day, before the fundraising miracle that is my current venue, Gymnopedie, I had to go back, like after a show, I'd have to return to the grind for a lot longer. And basically it's like, okay, Houseworld's done. The bank account is really low. And I've got to teach mad piano lessons to save up for the next one, to save up for Whisperlodge. Here we go. Just weeks and weeks of piano lesson, $60 at a time, saving up for the next show. And now it's nice that I don't have to take my eye off the ball that much after BOTO, and instead can seize some of this momentum. That's really exciting. But anyway, it was 2016, April. Melinda and I had our first coffee meeting, and then the next meetup was like, let's go to the thrift stores and CVS and whatever, and let's buy a bunch of ASMR stuff. That, we watched videos and took notes of like the quintessential props of ASMR. And by June or July, we had the first Whisperlodge show. Once again, it was by friends, for friends. I think it was 3 performers, 3 guests. And the ASMR Whisperlodge, it followed a different, it was not the improvised open world that Houseworld was, the free roaming sandbox where you can choose your own path and discover what you discover. But that wasn't so much because of the Andrew that was tired of the chaos and that wanted to like rein things in. It was just because the ASMR scenes are so private that it seemed to us that like anything else will ruin the scene. Like if I'm tapping on a hairbrush for you and then somebody busts through the door and is like, oh, I see you're busy, I'll come back later, it just kills the vibe. So by necessity, we just had to have those private one-on-one Whisperlodge scenes. And that led to this, on the rails guided form where you step into Whisperlodge and basically everything that you see and experience is more or less scripted. And there may be moments when you're prompted for a brief response or brief action. You're still interacting, you're still embodied, you're in a 360 world, but it's a tracked experience. And that's something that continued on to BOTO in order to rein in some of that chaos and experiment with a little more control. Now, one thing about Whisperlodge is that I thought it was going to be easier to find our audience. Like I looked at all those gentle whispering videos with 2 million hits, 1 million hits, 8 million hits, whatever. And then all the other ASMR artists with the same or similar. And I was like, surely we'll be able to fill up this New York City show with, 150 people for the run or 120 people for the run. Surely. If there's millions of people hungry for every one of these videos, we'll be able to fill our long week, our Wednesday through Sunday run of immersive ASMR in New York City. But it turned out that we had to rely on the Houseworld mailing list for longer than I thought. We had things like one of the ladies that featured Houseworld in the New York Times, not the reviewer, Ben Brantley, but Sarah Lyle, who wrote this feature about lots of immersive shows, including Houseworld. And she attended Whisperlodge in November 2016 and seemed to like it, but didn't write anything. And it was kind of like that for a long time. And, so I guess like the first demo was June or July. And by May, when we did Summer Sanctum on Governor's Island, Whisperlodge Summer Sanctum was the name of that edition, that iteration. It seemed like we were getting to the bottom of the Houseworld mailing list, or the segment of the Houseworld mailing list that was willing to come to Whisperlodge. And I felt a little trepidatious and maybe even a little guilty of like, man, I hope that these people, I hope these attendees aren't hoping too hard, like, oh, it's the next Houseworld thing. There's going to be a monster. There's going to be spirits. There's going to be fairies. There's going to be magic. And instead, we were tapping on the wooden hairbrush for them. I hope that they weren't underwhelmed by Whisperlodge. And as the tickets sales started to come in slower for Summer Sanctum, it sort of felt like, maybe this isn't going to catch the way I thought. Maybe these millions of ASMR viewers, they just like it on the computer screen, and that's it. But then we'd invited this writer from The Atlantic. This writer from The Atlantic had come to our ASMR day. What was it? It was called Whispers on Demand. And they'd written this article about us. It wasn't printed in The Atlantic. It was just online. And it was one of those things where like sometimes press makes a big splash, and sometimes it almost seems like it makes no splash. And it was one of those things where I think we got like 29 new Instagram followers on the day the Atlantic article came out. It's one of those things where it felt like nobody noticed that it's there. It was like under-circulated. But the press noticed. That was the one thing. And we got, and BuzzFeed booked to visit Whisperlodge in June of 2017. And that was finally the press that started the press avalanche, the Whisperlodge feeding frenzy. A press feeding frenzy which I've never experienced again, before or since. where it seemed like every publication wanted to have their own Whisperlodge article, which was dope, which was sick. And so once that BuzzFeed video came out, it felt like, okay. I mean, I hadn't intended to be doing Whisperlodge for a year as a complete newbie, as a know-nothing to ASMR. Suddenly I've been, spreading the ASMR Whisperlodge gospel for a year. And it sort of felt like, all right, I've almost gotten my fill of doing this, but I want to go back to the fantasy. I want to go back to the surrealism of Houseworld, or maybe not Houseworld itself, but I want to do a Houseworld-like show again, once more. And but it felt like, okay, now that BuzzFeed's out, it's time to use some of this momentum and see how big this thing can get. And because I come from the musician life, it seems like touring is indicative that you're evolving and you're progressing. So we decided to tour Whisperlodge, and we performed Whisperlodge in San Francisco and Los Angeles, take it to the West Coast. And finally we got the good old New York Times to seal the deal and do a little profile on us in January of 2018, and that was my last appearance actively on the Whisperlodge team. And it got and it carried on in the loving arms of Melinda, my co-creator, and also Chia and Amanda and Leah and Pamela, and that was sort of nice, because Houseworld disappeared as soon as it was done, and it was kind of nice to have a show carry on even after I'd taken my hands off it. Now let's walk back a second before we start sticking our feelers out into how Whisperlodge led to BOTO. And also what I learned at Whisperlodge, some Whisperlodge takeaways. Let's go to 2016. Now 2016, like I said, it was sort of this moment of like a feeling of strength and confidence and maybe even cockiness. And besides doing Whisperlodge, I stuck my finger in a whole bunch of pies. And those one-off immersive experiences, the first was Houseworld: The Sensitive Ear, an immersive concert at Ars Nova's Ant Fest. Say that 3 times fast. Then we've got the immersive sideshow at Elements Electronic Music Festival. And then I also worked on an immersive wedding in 2016. And I worked on the immersive dinner gala of the Future of Storytelling's Faust Fest. Like, they had a dinner gala kicked off the festival, and I did the immersive world surrounding that dinner. And my big takeaway from those 4 one-offs was that one-offs, as an immersive creator, watch the fuck out for one-offs. Now, I know that sometimes some of those creators out there are doing activations, and like a movie will come out and there'll be, like like Stephen King's The It House activation or whatever. But the one-offs that I was doing, it wasn't like all of them in different ways I'm proud of. And all of them I learned a lot from, and none of them were a waste of time. But they were just like, given that you can only work on so much, it just felt like we were like planting gardens and then clipping them as soon as the first shoot came out of the soil, clipping them and then moving to the next garden. Like, given that you can only do so much work in 24 hours, it felt like the wrong way to sort of let our work evaporate into the ether. And I'll give you 2 stories that sort of illustrate sort of the door slamming in the face of these one-offs. Now, one was that at Ars Nova's Ant Fest, which they still do, which is a super cool way for theater makers to see their work on stage at the Ars Nova Black Box Theater, they gave each of the teams, and I think maybe there were 15 teams, they gave each of them, I think, $125 or $150 stipend. Like, go buy some hats or costumes, or, however you want to use this money. It's not necessarily going to fund your entire play, but you're also not making a big budget play. You're making a one night only thing to show on our stage. And I, of course, was buying, I was making this immersive piece, and I wanted to impress and, make the best next iteration of the Houseworld universe. So I was going to Old Iron Salvage and buying the tub. I think the tub costs $200 a tub, $250 a tub. Buying the most affordable twin bed. I think that's $120. So immediately I'm way over the stipend. And even when we parked our U-Haul just a block from Ars Nova after loading in, $75 just to park. And our stipend was $125. Just half of it just to park. So that was just obviously it was like a square peg to a circle hole sort of bad fit. But in some ways that was a beautiful 45 minutes at Ars Nova that I'm proud of. And the other example of when I really just thought, no more one-offs. I gotta find a full-time venue. I gotta be able to go somewhere and just plant my roots, set up shop. No more one-offs. So the moment is Elements Festival 2016. It happened in Red Hook at this derelict granary, and it was the most badass derelict industrial setting you can imagine. If you're looking for the final battle of Terminator, look no further than this derelict grain silo in Red Hook. The video. This is what happens when you long form podcast. Look no further than this derelict grain silo in Red Hook. And so we set everything up, and I showed up to tear everything down, grabbing the twin bed, just taking the mattress by myself to the truck, grabbing the twin bed frame, taking it to the truck, and just by maybe I got there at 9 a.m. I can't remember. 10 a.m. pulled the U-Haul up, and it's 5:30 p.m., 6 p.m., the sun's setting. I'm just covered in sweat. Maybe I'm working with my shirt off. There's covered in dirt, and just trying to get out of there. I still gotta take this all to the storage space in Patterson, New Jersey, and then I gotta drop off the U-Haul, and the sun's already setting. So I'm just and I'm pulling down these curtains, right? And we had these big I don't know, let's say 12-foot black curtains coming down from the ceiling. And we use magnets to connect all these medium strips of fabric into one giant, 30-foot curtain that divided the room in two. So I'm pulling down curtain, and then one of the magnets just got yanked down and smacked right into my nose. Gave me a bloody nose. Now, Elements Festival had paid me $1,500 to stage the immersive sideshow at their festival. Basically, concert or electronic music festival goers would, go into a side room and suddenly discover this wild, fantastical world created by Houseworld Immersive. Although that wasn't our name back then. Created by Houseworld. So they gave me $1,500, but I'd spent $2,000 to make that immersive sideshow happen. And so as I drove away, sun setting, driving that U-Haul full of basically random crap to Paterson, New Jersey, with a bloody nose dripping through the dirt and sweat by myself. I'm just like, fuck it. I paid $500 to do that. That ain't right. I worked so hard, and I paid $500 to work that hard and get a bloody nose. No more one-offs. That was the lesson. Now, as for the lessons of Whisperlodge, the lesson about performer to audience ratio. That was a big one for me. So when we started Houseworld, everyone was performing for free. It was our friends performing for our friends free. The Houseworld public run, people were performing for pennies. They were like, I don't know, what was it? 6:30 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. on Friday, 6:30 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. on Saturday. 7-hour shifts. Friday, Saturday, 7 weekends in a row, I think. And at the end, each person got $1,200 total. So they were working for pennies over the course of the month. But they were doing it for love. They were doing it for love, for fulfillment, for meaning, for passion. The same reason I was doing it. But when, creators or aspiring creators, or just if you want to hear my story, like as you go along, as your show, if you gain some success and the show is now, you're doing 50 in a row, you're doing 100 in a row, you're doing 500 in a row, it still offers meaning and fulfillment, but you can't really expect someone to show up 100 times and do the same thing 100 times in a row for just meaning and fulfillment. And so you have to start paying, and I'd say like $50 for a show. It's kind of like baseline, because it's basically minimum wage. Like if a show is 2 hours, that's kind of long, but if a show is 90 minutes, but of course there's some wrap up after that show, and of course your cast isn't going to arrive right when the audience is arriving. They're not going to leave right when the audience are leaving. So with that buffer on either side, $50 basically turns into paying your cast minimum wage for their performance. And obviously their performance is a specialized skill. It's not a base level job. And so $50, that can get you by for a while. And hopefully you can work your way up to like 70 or 80. And, if I'm an artist, like playing music all those years in my 20s, if I walk away from a night, I'm like, hey, I made $75 from playing that concert. And if I play 5 concerts, 5 nights in a week, I made $375 for doing what I love. That's that's a chunk of groceries. That's a chunk of rent in New York. Now the payment amount that we ended up with in BOTO, doing those shows, doing hundreds of shows, was $110 for what was basically a 3-hour and 15-minute commitment from the cast. And that was a blessing to be able to pay that much. And it kind of felt like we needed to pay that much in order to keep everyone interested and happy, and going with the flow of the repetitive element that inevitably happens in live performance. So if your audience shows up and they bought a $90 ticket and your performance is working for $70, 70 of those dollars from that one, in that one-on-one show, 70 of those dollars just go right from the pocket of the audience right into the pocket of the performer. Simple as that. And let's say, so they paid 90, your performer earned 70. So now you have $20 that are being earned for every performer audience pair that pays for everything else. What is everything else? Well, most likely there's rent to pay. And it's pretty hard to pay rent with in Whisperlodge, like 9 audience members worth of $20. So that'd be $180 is the show's profit. And so basically what you end up with is that massage prices in order to put on a one-on-one immersive show, where the tickets are inevitably going to cost, think like stone massage, hot oil massage, cupping massage. These are all like $110, $130, $180, and that's what your show ends up costing if you keep that one-on-one ratio. Now, the one-on-one ratio is really tantalizing, right? I ask the audience a question, they must give me an answer. They're the only one that I asked. I give them an object, they give me an object. I ask for them a story, they're telling their story, and nobody's waiting for them to be done. So the one-on-one ratio is really tantalizing, but you just know in advance that massage level prices is the destination. And I think that probably some of the people interested in making immersive theater are not going to want to only have like that upper class echelon of people paying massage level prices to come to the show. There's some people that are going to want to have a $50 ticket, a $30 ticket, a $75 ticket. And I think, and sometimes that's the only way you're going to be able to get your audience. Like, so it's not even a matter of like, I don't want just upper class people to see us. I want everybody to see us. Sometimes there aren't enough people in the upper class to see you. You got to like widen your arms in order to find your audience. And so having more audience to performers, like the more you expand that ratio, the more wiggle room you're going to have. And here's a big lesson from Sleep No More and Meow Wolf is we can see from each of those shows that attendees can entertain themselves with no performers. And it's not like they're just like settling for this room. Oh, there's no performers. I guess I'll do something until something special happens to me again. No. Attendees do like going through those drawers and reading those letters. They do like going from set to set to set. And maybe no performers are around for a few minutes. And in Meow Wolf, the people who attend Meow Wolf, I know there's like docents. I haven't been yet to any of the Meow Wolves. I know there's docents that have like a performer-like quality, but I get the impression that a lot of it is performer-free. And people do like discovering the sets and playing the woolly mammoth bones and watching the videos and listening to audio and putting the story together, this family that used to live in the house. So people can entertain themselves some of the time. And so I think it's in my best interest. It would be shooting myself in the foot to ignore that aspect. And I think the real choice is have some one-on-one so I get to work with that scene whose dynamic I'm so curious about and so excited about. But I also take advantage of the fact that the audience can explore on their own and entertain themselves as long as they're in a rich and detailed set. And that's going to help keep the ticket prices down for everyone. It's going to allow more people of all income levels to access the show, and that's a good thing. The ratio that I've been playing with within BOTO that I think I'm going to continue in Houseworld is 3 performers, 5 audience. And Houseworld's going to be 20 performers, 35 audience. The second iteration of Houseworld, Houseworld 2, which is the 4th major work from Houseworld Immersive. I don't think I've said that yet in this video, but that's what's going on. That's where I'm shooting for. That's how I'm going to spend the next 3 or 4 years of my life. And yeah, that ratio is not set in stone. Maybe it should be 15 performers, 35 audience. And maybe I should just take a little more time to make a set that entertains the audience in place of the performer. But that one-on-one audience to performer ratio and the massage prices, I don't think I'm ever going back to that, to be honest. Not to discourage you. I think some beautiful shows can be made from that dynamic, but I got my fill. So with Whisperlodge, Like the thing that I started being very antsy for, as I ended up spending a year and a half in ASMR world, and I was being like, my decision was from day one is like be super faithful to the ASMR subculture, because in some ways this is like an opportunistic thing that I'm doing, and I don't want to be exploiting ASMR, just like, hey, I know nothing, but come to my show. It's an ASMR show. I don't want to be piggybacking on this successful subculture that's just started cropping up. And so after a year and a half of being faithful to what the ASMR artists had done before me and simply transposing it to an in-person 360-degree setting, interactive setting, I was ready to return to things like Houseworld. A fantastical world, spirits, monsters, fairies, magic, light moments, dark moments, funny moments, transcendent healing moments, scary moments, high energy moments, along with the mellow, low energy moments. Now, not all of these were thoroughly accomplished in BOTO, but I didn't know that I was going to do Bottom of the Ocean as the third show. Instead, I was just fucking around with all these brainstorms, and a lot of them were fizzling out, right? Like one of my projects in 2018 in trying to make the third show, I was trying to make a house world that could happen in like a McKibben loft sort of space. You know, basically like a loft with 5 roommates, with like a common space and then the little rooms. And I wanted to make a show for a space that I felt like I could realistically find without too much trouble. Unlike Houseworld, which we realized after we started searching for the venue was like trying to shoot the moon. So I was trying to make a compact house world, but it just wasn't happening. And then I picked up this brainstorm for a sound bath. Like I'd been doing sound baths as like a hobby, I guess. Me and my friend Pamela were staging sound baths every so often. And one time I sat down for 2 hours and I sketched out what would people do before the sound bath if there was an immersive theater show leading them to the sound bath. I wrote the rooms, and then I picked it back up in 2018, a year later, after writing it. And that was just the brainstorm that wanted to fill itself in to completion. And so I said, I've got a complete show. Let's try it. And I staged the demo and I stuck with it, and the rest is history. BOTO was the third show. Bottom of the Ocean was the third show. Now, I am going to not talk at length. Like, there are videos on this very YouTube channel. The videos are how to make your own, how to find your own immersive theater venue, how to make immersive theater your full-time job. Those videos. Those were the thoughts and the things I wanted to share with you that I most wanted to get off my chest. That's why I made those videos first. And in a way, I'm sort of riffing and expounding in the same way now, just with a much larger range of what I'm talking about. But I'm not going to... Basically, I was convinced from all those horrible one-offs of 2016, I was convinced that I needed to be somewhere long-term and need to find my own venue and build a third show in there. And that led to finding that venue, Gymnopedie, and it led to building Bottom of the Ocean in there. And because having spent that time in Whisperlodge, Bottom of the Ocean was going to be fantastical, it's going to be magic, it's going to be more like Houseworld. And indeed, it was going to have more, it was going to be a place to work, to tinker with and sculpt scenes that had originally shown up in Houseworld. So if anybody who was watching this video remembers Houseworld, I mean, or if you didn't, I'll just tell you, there was a scene where you got your hands washed. And in Bottom of the Ocean, there was a scene where you got your hands washed. That was me trying to sculpt that scene and turn something improvisational into something more full and complete, a finished work. and something that happens the same every time. The balloon room of Houseworld. There was a balloon room in Houseworld, but it was very vague what its significance and meaning was, and a lot of performers would riff with it. But the memory cave that was in Bottom of the Ocean, that was a much more surgical attempt to say, here's why there's balloons in this room, here's what we do while we're in here. The coins on the eyes, that was from Houseworld. The sound bath at the end, that's in Houseworld. And so the idea there was taking these scenes that had originally started in an open world where you were free to roam, free agency, free traversal. All the actors are improvising to take the chaos of that open and improvised world and do it more like Whisperlodge, where the audience is going along a track, and although they're prompted now and then, would you like to tell a story now? Would you like to fill in this world now? Yes or no? Do this. But by and large, 95% of the performance is scripted, and it happens the same way every time. And I started to have doubts and insecurities about that decision. And maybe it was just that I was feeling like, is BOTO good, or is it just okay? Is it great, or is it just good? And I started to worry that I disposed of the good in Houseworld while disposing of the bad. Maybe the good and the bad were the same chunk, and you can't throw it out, or you don't just clean up the bad from it, you also get rid of its virtue and its merit. I was really worried about that. And there was this important observation and memory I had, where COVID, the high pandemic as they call it, was winding down. Maybe it was like summer of, maybe it's like May of 2021. Maybe BOTO was just a few months away. Maybe it was even a whole summer before Bottom of the Ocean reopened post-pandemic. But we were having this very well-behaved punk rock show. The music was punk. The kids were punkish, but everyone was being very respectful of the space. There were like 40 people there. Some of them were playing in the bands. The rest were like watching, or like, the bands play for the other bands. It was a small, cool, well-behaved show. And it was happening in the classroom section of my venue, basically like what became backstage of Bottom of the Ocean. So it was happening in this small back room, and I just left the doors unlocked that led to the set designed Bottom of the Ocean section of the basement. And so just very gradually, 2 by 2, 1 by 1, these attendees at this punk rock show, they discover this door was unlocked, and they just walk across the empty gym. There was no set design in the gym at that time. And then they walk into all those little rooms, set designed for Bottom of the Ocean. They discover the mannequin room. They discover the vine room. They discover the balloon tent and the shrine. And there was just an electricity in the air watching those people go forward and find, and then watching them come back, watching them tell their friends, like, hey, you should go through that door. There's a bunch of like wild stuff on the other side. And they would just go in, they'd find these empty sets. There weren't any characters. There was nothing going on over there. It was just the sets lit in pretty lighting. And I watched those people in that free traversal through that open world, and I was just like, damn, is that it? Is there so much magic in that freedom and in that discovery that I've taken it away in BOTO, and I've taken away the best part of immersive theater pieces. That was the worry. But BOTO was already too far along. I couldn't make BOTO an open world, so I just had to set that worry aside and work with BOTO on BOTO's terms. And gradually, month after month, trying a little this, a little that, make this line a little better, make this set a little better, add this piece of technology here. Gradually, BOTO blossomed on its own terms, and it didn't need that free roaming. But even before we reopened, post-pandemic, I just started to really see at that night at that punk rock show that there's something inimitable. There's something very special about the open world. And I put a bookmark in that desire of like, I can't go back there now, but I'm ready to go back there. And as you might remember, we were approaching Houseworld as total amateurs, knowing nothing about what was going to be easy, what was going to go wrong. Like, are we choosing a show that's easy to do in 2014? Are we choosing the hardest type of show to do? We didn't know. And now looking back, I think like, yeah, that's a very difficult format to work with, especially your first time out. But now in 2023, I can start from square one. I can start from that long form podcast. I don't get to edit that out. I can start from square one, and I see this expanse of the next 3 or 4 years laying before me, 2023, 2024, and I see that open and improvised world and all its chaos ahead of me, and I can make the safeguards in advance so that the floor is as high as it can be. And even somebody's worst night at Houseworld 2, it's only so bad. And the ceiling of how good it can be for the people who love it the most is super high. And we're just getting so many of those 35 attendees. We're getting so many of them in the upper echelons of how much you can enjoy it. We're doing that through making the best improvisations we can make. We're doing it by making more scripted parts than before. We're doing it by making elements of the common space or like the space aside from the performers that inhabit it. It's going to be more engaging, just the space alone, the set alone, and what audience can discover in it. And I think also something that I foresee is there's simply going to be more content. There's going to be more script. There's going to be more pages. There's going to be more things to say and do. And I think it's going to require a team of writers. It's going to have to not rely as much on just me as it did 8 years ago. And, to get into the gritty logistics with you for a second, I think it could look something like we perform Houseworld Wednesday through Sunday, and then Monday is like as before, as it was in BOTO 2022. Monday is laundry day. Monday is like maintenance and it's our day to rest and also just make sure that any problems get resolved during a day with no shows. Tuesday, instead of going straight back into show mode, it's our processing and integration day, where we say, we just spent 5 days, maybe 10 shows in this open and improvised world, and here's what we observed. Here's what lines are working. Here's what actions are working. Here's what lines are falling flat. Here's what actions are falling flat. And then we say, okay, these 2 things are crossed out of the script, and these 5 things are in the script. And then there'll be other actors on the team that aren't writers. And we simply say like, okay, hey, actor X, actor Y, who's a writer, they made these 5 discoveries. And so next time you play this character, these are 3 new lines that you should use. These are 2 new actions you should use. And you just please scrap that old interaction that we're nixing from the show. And we'll have a series of script. We'll have like a network of scripts on the Google Drive, a network of like approval, so that it's somewhat approved by the performer who's doing it. It's somewhat approved by the team. It's somewhat approved by me as sort of the last say. And I think that having a team of writers making sort of a crowdsourced script, not crowdsourced, but a group authored script. That's a promising way to go about it. It's a way that I'm going to give a try. I apologize, you guys, for interrupting our beautiful single shot, multi-hour, or almost multi-hour epic. But I did finish the original take. It's not long after this video. And there were just a few ideas that I left out about what's coming next. And I feel like it would be wrong to not include those ideas in this video. And the big one is at this, in 2023, looking out into the future, I kind of feel like I've outgrown churches, right? Now, churches, I basically ought to thank the Christian God for basically allowing my immersive career to exist at all. I mean, it leans so heavily into churches, it's crazy, let's face it. But the thing is, remember that Bottom of the Ocean, that just happened to be the third show by chance. It just happened to be the brainstorm that finished itself. And fortunately, it was a show that was super church friendly because it leaned on the quiet side. It was like this quiet, gentle, small 3-on-5 ritual. Now, that was the one place where we could have gotten into some trouble, is you're carrying out a ritual in the basement of a Christian church. But fortunately, like, the church they didn't want to know and they didn't ask. And it was basically undetectable. We were undetectable down there, other than that they heard us banging some floor tom drums every now and then. But with Houseworld, I don't necessarily know that it's going to be rated R, but I want it to be able, if it wants to be a rated R experience, I want it to be able to be that without me biting my nails as I write the script, without me worrying, like, is this going to be the thing that gets us kicked out, 1 month into the season, 1 month into the run. So, I want all those rated R things. All the rated R things. People cursing at the top of their lungs, F-bombs. I want people to be able to be naked if they want to be naked, nudity. I want there to be able to be like simulated gun and knife violence and bloody murders if that's what Houseworld wants to be. Simulated drugs, all the all the naughty vice stuff that makes R-rated movies, serious themes. I don't want to make the church uncomfortable by tolerating something that goes against their creed, and I also don't want me to be biting my nails for 2 years, because that's the goal at minimum, is that Houseworld's gonna last. Since BOTO made it longer than a year, obviously, but a big part of what we were trying to accomplish is we wanted it to go from the very first day of January 2022 all the way to Christmas, like filling up wall to wall the entire year. And the goal with Houseworld is at minimum wall to wall 2 years. However, really the aspirational goal, and what I think we can pull off, is to create permanent peace with no end, Sleep No More style. And we're really Sleep No More is the granddaddy, and as much as I'm in debt to churches and perhaps the Christian God, I am also in debt to Sleep No More. And I give credit where credit is due. And we're just going to try to make our Brooklyn version of the McKittrick Hotel. Maybe Sleep No More is the Madison Square Garden, and we're Barclays Center. Obviously bar is the first step. You get out of the theater show, you go over to the bar and discuss the show with your friends. What could be better than that? Restaurant is also amazing. Maybe get food before you go in. Love that. Or maybe you get out of the show and you don't only just have drinks, you have a full meal. And then, also the secondary venue. That's not so necessary. Ghost Quartet, that happened in the McKittrick Hotel. Flight, that art installation was staged in the McKittrick Hotel. All those magic shows. And that's not so crucial to me, but hey, I wouldn't turn it down. And obviously, I'm just like a bassist. I'm just a bass player and piano teacher that's winging all this stuff, Hail Mary Pass by Hail Mary Pass. And so the idea of me opening up a successful restaurant and bar where the service is good and the drinks and food are delicious and people love being in those places, and I don't know, the tables get bussed and everything, it seems just like 5 Hail Mary Passes forward. But in another way, I feel like we're closer than ever, and we may just be close enough. Like, I talked with Randy Weiner this year, and even Randy Weiner is just a human who started at square one at some point. And so I think we can get there too. And Felix, I met Felix at that FostFest dinner gala. These are all just humans like me who, got a little closer to having their own Disney World. But I think we can inch ourselves at scrappy indie Houseworld Immersive all the way up to that permanent venue echelon that we're striving for, reaching for. And and in general, we're striving for high production values. Finally, and I'm going to give you a secret. I'm going to give you a secret statistic since you've listened this far. Which one immersive theater nerd listened this far? I don't want to know. But in the New York Times review of Bottom of the Ocean, I think like the title or the subtitle was like mentioned low budget ingenuity, right? We have low budget or lo-fi ingenuity. And that was a fine compliment. We appreciated being described in that way. But on the other hand, I will tell you that the cast payments, and this is just the cast, not even the crew, not even Bear resetting the show, and obviously not the set, none of the props, none of the lights, none of it. Just the cast payments in 2022 was $161,000, right, for Bottom of the Ocean. And so on the one hand, you could say like, well, Broadway shows, those are $10 million productions. Yeah, point taken. But, being able to pay $161 to a cast in a year, to me, in some ways, it feels like, well, I'm not that low budget anymore. I'm getting somewhere, aren't I? It's a lot for me as a piano teacher with a dream. And you can imagine, like, the rest of the show cost a lot too. But at the same time, I understand why the New York Times described us in that way, because a lot of what we're doing, we're burning grapes. We are pouring a wax candle into a bowl of water. We're doing things that we're using props that each of them cost a few dollars. And, our costume, we're not performing in Lion King on Broadway style costumes. Our costumes are a notch more humble, and I get it. But my hope is, and I think the hope of everyone that I collaborate with, is that we're finally going to, if we're making our way up the mountain with our pick, our climber's pick, that we're finally going to sink that climber's pick into high fidelity with the next show, with high production values, sound, lights, costumes, props, everything. And that's exciting to imagine a Houseworld with truly high production values, Sleep No More level production values, Meow Wolf level production values, Secret Cinema level production values, Galactic Star Cruiser production values. That's what we're striving for. And that's it. Houseworld 2 is on the horizon. And that's how it started. That's how I got there. Those are some things I learned. Hope I didn't forget anything that's gnawing at me too much. Thank you very much for going along in this journey with me on this long form podcast. I hope that you enjoy your ideas and your creativity in the same way that I do. And I hope that... I don't know. There's no way to tie this up with a bow. This is a long-form podcast. There's no... see, this is exactly what would happen in the bad Houseworld scenes. Is the improvisation fizzles out. So we're gonna leave this video like that as an example of what not to do. Some things are fun to improvise and just let fizzle and go out with a whimper. And some things ought to be scripted and go out with a bang. So may we all have the wisdom to know the difference. I'll see you back in New York in 2023. Happy New Year, everybody.